absolutely great point. The line between sport and entertainment is now blurring, and I think the desire for the public to get into the athletic life has become tremendous. You know, we're very voyeuristic. I think we don't feel alone. I think when we see these heroes fall, these people fall, it makes us feel a little bit better about ourselves and some of the things that we do as well. And I think ultimately that's really where it's at.
It may be an indication of the breakdown of the heroes in the family versus the heroes on television.
Well, I have a question, but I'm going to yield my time to Steve from California. What's your question or comment?
You're making the assumption that Kobe's already guilty. How do you know it wasn't her?
I didn't mean to imply that. I didn't mean to imply that I thought Kobe was guilty. What I was trying to reference is the fact that we've got lots of stories out there about athletes in the headlines that we were just talking about, and certainly not meaning to cast any aspersions on Kobe Bryant.
You know, clearly, when you look what's going on with men and children in general, if you think that being exposed to on television, the violence, the sexuality, the early sexuality, I was watching Leave It to Beaver. You know, Wally and the Beaver didn't do these things. And, you know, what we're seeing now. So you have to expect that that's going to definitely have an effect. Children are seeing sexual innuendos at such a young age. So the idea that sexuality is introduced so early on, like children are starting now to have sexual relations 8, 9, and 10. Our generation began much earlier, much later, I'm sorry. I would have liked to have started earlier, much later, you know, than I did. And sexuality now is pervasive to this culture, so it's infused into the culture in general.
So what do parents do who are concerned about this, particularly parents of young boys?
Well, it's hard because as your children get to that stage, they're supposed to go with peers. So it's the peer culture, and it's very hard for parents to take your child out of the peer culture. So the question is, what do we do with our whole society where the girls are dressing very provocatively when they're 8?
Well, but this is because I know there are lots of 8, 9, and 10-year-olds who are not having sexual relations.
There are a lot
that are not. So I mean, it's not because there are some that are. It doesn't mean that the majority is. So what's the difference, I guess? And to kind of get it back to sports, I think you're saying there is no link. That this is basically a very sex-saturated society, and it saturates everything. And again, in fairness to Kobe, we know something happened. We don't know if he's guilty of anything. We won't know for some time. But it's almost like you're saying we're turning the question on its head. We shouldn't be asking about sex and athletes. We should just be talking about sex and how it plays out and what we can. And as a society, how we should be examining that. Have we gotten so far on this pendulum that I don't know what's left for babies to have sex with each other, for people to have sex on television, you know, all the time.
Well,
and where are we going?
Babies are not ready to have sex with each other, but they have sex with themselves.
Very good. I like that.
Always learn something new on the flip side.
Well, I agree with what you were saying with regard to sports, that maybe it is that this is an arena where there is such a focus, and then you, Dagmar, said there's also politics, and then there's Wall Street. So we have broadened the topic. It is not just in sports, but
and the film star.
But systemically, what do we as a society do wrong to even encourage or allow hazing, bullying, whatever the arena?
There are many reasons. One of the many reasons could be simply that parents are not home. Their children are hooked up to a television set. There are a lot of working mothers today. So they are, and television and other medias are selling through sex. They're exposed to it in a different way.
I think what also happened is that a push has now become a shove. So what happens is as they become exposed to the higher levels of violence. So as we push the envelope in the area of sex, aggression, social mores, no longer is it satisfying to just have sex with one woman, you have to be with 3 women. No longer is it satisfying to hit somebody, you have to beat him into a pulp. So you have to, your emotional state has to get something out of it now, has to be even higher and stronger and more. So it's always more and more and more. Exactly, and pushing the emotional envelope further and further to get gratification. So it's no longer punching the guy in the face, like I said. Now you have to, you know,
beat him with a baseball bat.
Beat him with a baseball bat. I didn't want to get to the Memphis and, you know, be that graphic.
We become numb to horrors.
Right.
Which
exactly.
is very sad.
Exactly.
Let's take another caller, Bob from Georgia. What's your question or comment?
Well, I just wanted to mention that what you're saying is true about the things have increased, tenfold since I was a kid. I'm 41 now. I mean, when you're a kid, it's all about being accepted with a larger group of guys. You want to be accepted, and then they find some little kid that they pick on, and then they do all sorts of nasty things. It's not because it's just that everybody wants to be accepted. But when you get older, when you're in the professional ranks, now you're talking about money. Now people see dollar signs, so it's easy. You don't necessarily really have to do anything, and somebody could just say, "Oh, this guy did this to me," and it's how do you not prove it? Because if there's nothing physical there, it's hard to prove. So they try to sue him and get money out of him, but. I mean, that's a whole other rank, but when you're a kid, there's a lot of pressure on kids.
There's tremendous peer pressure among children not to fit in. Children who do not fit in, and I see many in my practice, are generally children who feel isolated from their peer group. But when you look at bullying statistics on bullies, generally close to 40% land up being repeat criminals, at risk for drugs, at risk for all sorts of kind of things that go on. And bullying is something that's being taken up in the schools as a high priority, to say the least.
The bullying is learned in the home, usually. There's somebody who's bullying the child is playing it out with the peers.
I think so. I think behind any bully, of course, is a low self-concept, that's to say the least. On the other hand, when kids come into, there are appropriate ways in society, by the way, to get into something. When you're new on, let's say, a dance team or the kick line, that's for women, let's say, we've been talking about men, you certainly need to find your place. You're not equal to a senior. A sophomore or a freshman is not equal to a senior, and people need to know that. So there is that degree of that you need to wait your time to become a senior to get playing time, unless you're an all-star athlete. And I think that needs to be accepted and understood. And there is to some degree of hazing that goes on in that regard. When it's carried to that level, like I said before, it's well out of bounds.
Dr. O'Connor, any final thoughts?
Yes, I also think we need to remember that pre-adolescent children express sexuality fairly violently, and you can stay at that stage and not grow out of it.
Okay. Well, Dr. Dagmar O'Connor, Dr. Richard Westbrook, thank you for joining us. Fascinating discussion. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Coming up.